The mournful sound of the train whistle echoed across the prairie as Hannah Jane clutched her tear-stained handkerchief, her slim frame shaking with sobs beside the newly laid tracks. October 1876 had brought nothing but sorrow to the young widow, whose black mourning dress billowed slightly in the cool Wyoming wind. At 23, Hannah never imagined she'd be burying her husband of 3 years, leaving her alone with a small homestead she couldn't possibly manage and debts she couldn't possibly pay. The train had just departed, taking with it the last of her hope. Hannah had received word that the bank would foreclose on her property within the week, and the telegram she desperately sent to her only living relative and aunt in Missouri had been answered with regretful news that there was no room for her there. "Madam, are you all right?" The deep voice startled her from her grief. Hannah looked up through swollen eyes to see a tall figure silhouetted against the setting sun. A dusty cowboy sat atop a chestnut horse, leading a wagon behind him. His face was partially shadowed by his wide-brimmed hat, but she could make out a strong jawline dusted with several days' worth of stubble. Hannah couldn't finish the sentence, a fresh wave of tears overtaking her. The stranger dismounted in one fluid motion, approaching her with cautious steps. As he drew closer, Hannah could see kind blue eyes studying her with concern. "Name's Finn Abernathy, madam. Can't in good conscience leave a lady crying by these tracks with night coming on." He removed his hat, revealing sandy brown hair that curled slightly at the nape of his neck. "Where are you headed?" Hannah wiped her eyes. "Nowhere, I have nowhere to go." Finn's expression softened. "That can't be true." "My husband died 3 weeks ago, pneumonia. The bank is taking our homestead tomorrow. Her voice broke. "I thought my aunt might take me in, but she can't." Finn looked down the empty tracks, then back at the small valise at Hannah's feet, all that remained of her possessions. "I've got a ranch about 10 miles from here. It ain't much, but there's a spare room in the house. My housekeeper, Mrs. Peterson, is there. You'd be proper chaperoned." He hesitated. "At least until you figure things out." Hannah stared at him, suspicious despite his kind eyes. "Why would you help a stranger?" "My ma raised me to believe a man's measure is how he treats those who can do nothing for him." Finn extended his hand. "I promise you'll be safe, Mrs. Jane, Hannah Jane. Mrs. Jane, I can't leave you here as night falls. Wolves prowl these parts, both the 4-legged kind and the 2-legged sort. Please, let me help you." Hannah looked at the empty tracks, then at the darkening sky. She had no other options. With a trembling hand, she accepted his help. Finn lifted her gently into the wagon, securing her valise beside her. "I don't mean to presume, Mrs. Jane, but sometimes the good Lord closes one door to open another." As they pulled away from the train station, Hannah couldn't help but wonder if this kind stranger was right. Perhaps the ending of one chapter of her life could lead to something she never expected. The wagon jostled along the rutted trail as dusk deepened around them. Hannah sat stiffly, clutching her small valise, acutely aware of the impropriety of her situation despite Finn's assurances about his housekeeper. "Been ranching these parts for 5 years now," Finn said, breaking the uncomfortable silence. "Came west after the war with not much more than the horse and the clothes on my back." Hannah glanced at him. "You fought in the war," Finn nodded, his expression solemn. "Union cavalry. Signed up in '63 when I was 18. Spent most of my time in Tennessee and Georgia." "My husband, Thomas, he was too young to fight," Hannah offered. "We married in '73 when I was 20. He had such dreams for our homestead." "I'm sorry for your loss, Mrs. Jane, truly." The sincerity in his voice touched her. "Thank you, Mr. Abernathy. Finn, please." They fell into silence again, but it felt less strained now. Hannah watched the landscape transform in the fading light, rolling hills dotted with sagebrush and the occasional cottonwood tree. The vastness of the Wyoming territory stretched in every direction, making her feel both insignificant and somehow free. "There she is," Finn said after they crested a hill. "Abernathy Ranch." In the valley below, Hannah could make out a substantial log cabin with a stone chimney, several outbuildings and corrals containing horses. Lantern light glowed warmly from the cabin windows. "It's bigger than I expected," Hannah admitted. Finn chuckled. "Started with just the center part. Added on each year as the herd grew. Cattle baron I ain't, but we do all right." As they approached, an older woman emerged from the cabin, wiping her hands on her apron. Her gray hair was pulled into a tight bun, and she squinted suspiciously at the wagon. "Finn Abernathy, who have you brought home this time?" she called out. "Mrs. Peterson, this is Mrs. Hannah Jane. She's fallen on hard times and needs a place to stay for a spell," Finn explained as he brought the wagon to a halt. The housekeeper's expression softened as she took in Hannah's mourning clothes and tear-stained face. "Well then, come on inside, dear. You look half frozen and wholly exhausted." Finn helped Hannah down from the wagon, his large hands gentle at her waist. The brief contact sent an unexpected warmth through her that she quickly dismissed as simple gratitude. "I'll see to the horses," Finn said. "Mrs. Peterson will get you settled." The housekeeper ushered Hannah inside, where a fire crackled in the stone hearth. The cabin was rustic but comfortable, with solid wooden furniture and colorful quilts. "Poor thing, you're shaking like an aspen leaf," Mrs. Peterson clucked, leading Hannah to a chair by the fire. "I'll fix you some tea and warm food. When did you last eat?" Hannah couldn't remember. "Yesterday, perhaps," Mrs. Peterson's eyes widened. "Well, that won't do at all." Within minutes, Hannah found herself with a steaming mug of tea and a bowl of savory stew. The simple kindness of these strangers brought fresh tears to her eyes. Now, Mrs. Peterson soothed. "You're safe here. Finn's a good man, best I've known since my Harold passed, God rest his soul. He's got a habit of collecting strays, both the four-legged and two-legged variety." "I don't want to be a burden," Hannah said quietly. "Nonsense. This place could use a woman's touch besides my old hands, Mrs. Peterson studied her. "Can you cook?" "So," Hannah nodded. "I managed our household and helped with the crops." "Good. Then you'll earn your keep and nobody can call you a charity case if that's what worries you." The door opened and Finn entered, removing his hat and coat. His eyes immediately found Hannah's and he offered a tentative smile. "Feeling better, Mrs. Jane?" "Yes, thank you." Hannah straightened her posture. "Mr. Abernathy, Finn, I want you to know I intend to work for my room and board. I won't be a burden." Finn's smile widened. "I never thought you would be, but we can discuss particulars tomorrow. Tonight you rest." Mrs. Peterson showed Hannah to a small but clean bedroom at the back of the house. After the housekeeper left, Hannah sat on the edge of the bed, running her fingers over the patchwork quilt. For the first time in weeks, she felt a tiny flicker of hope. Perhaps tomorrow wouldn't be worse than today. Perhaps there was still a path forward, even if it wasn't the one she had planned. Hannah awoke to the smell of coffee and bacon. For a moment, she was disoriented, expecting to see the familiar walls of her homestead. Reality crashed back as she remembered Thomas was gone, their home lost, and she was dependent on the charity of a stranger. She dressed quickly in her second-best dress, which was well worn but still presentable. After pinning her chestnut hair into a simple bun, she made her way to the kitchen. Mrs. Peterson was at the stove, flipping flapjacks with practiced ease. "Good morning, dear. Sleep well." "Better than I have in weeks," Hannah admitted. "May I help? Set the table if you would. Finn will be in shortly. He's always up before dawn, checking the cattle." Hannah had just finished arranging the plates when the door opened. Finn entered, bringing with him the scent of morning air and leather. Without his hat, she could properly see his face handsome in a rugged way, with laugh lines around his eyes despite his serious expression. "Morning," he said, nodding to both women as he washed his hands in the basin by the door. "Looks like we might get rain later." "Your coffee's hot," Mrs. Peterson said, placing a steaming mug at his place. They ate breakfast with little conversation, though Hannah caught Finn studying her when he thought she wasn't looking. After they finished, he cleared his throat. "Mrs. Jane, I was thinking you might want to ride into town with me today. You'll need some supplies if you're staying a while, and he hesitated. I thought you might want to send word to anyone who might be worried about you. Hannah's throat tightened. There's no one to worry, but yes, I should like to go to town. I have a little money saved. Keep your money, Finn said firmly. Consider it an advance on your wages. Wages? Mrs. Peterson mentioned you're handy with household matters. Truth is, she's been wanting help for some time. The ranch is growing, and there's more work than she can manage alone. Hannah glanced at the housekeeper, who nodded in confirmation. These old bones aren't what they used to be, Mrs. Peterson said. And the men need feeding, the house needs keeping, and come spring, there'll be calves and gardens to tend. The men? Hannah asked. I've got 3 ranch hands, Finn explained. They bunk in the outbuilding, good men, respectful, you needn't worry. An hour later, Hannah found herself back in Finn's wagon, heading toward the small town of Rivercross. The journey gave her time to observe her benefactor more carefully. His hands were strong and calloused, his movements confident as he handled the reins. Despite his rugged appearance, there was a gentleness about him that put her at ease. May I ask you something, Finn? He glanced at her. Of course. Why are you really helping me? And please don't say it's just because your mother raised you right. Finn was quiet for so long that Hannah thought he might not answer. Finally, he sighed. I lost someone too, my wife Sarah, 5 years ago on our way west. His voice was steady but tinged with old pain. Cholera took her in Nebraska. I came on alone because I couldn't bear to go back east where every street, every house would remind me of her. I'm sorry, Hannah said softly. When I saw you by those tracks yesterday, looking like the world had ended. He shook his head. I reckon I know something about that feeling. Nobody helped me then. Wish someone had. Hannah understood then. This wasn't just charity, it was one wounded soul recognizing another. Rivercross proved to be little more than a single street with essential businesses: general store, blacksmith, saloon, small bank, and a modest church. Finn helped Hannah down from the wagon and offered his arm as they walked toward the general store. Morning, Finn, the shopkeeper called out as they entered. His curious gaze swept over Hannah. Who's your friend? Mrs. Hannah Jane, this is Oliver Grant. Best shopkeeper in the territory, though don't tell him I said so his prices will go up. Finn's easy smile transformed his face, making him look younger. Pleased to meet you, Mrs. Jane, Oliver said, tipping his head respectfully. Mrs. Jane is staying at the ranch for a while, Finn explained, keeping details vague. She'll need some essentials. Hannah felt a flush of embarrassment at her dependence but squared her shoulders. I'll repay every cent, Mr. Abernathy, I have no doubt, Finn replied quietly. They selected practical items, fabric for new clothes, personal necessities, and a warm shawl for the approaching winter. Finn insisted on adding a small bottle of lavender water and a hairbrush with a silver handle. Every lady should have something pretty, he said when she protested. As they left the store, Hannah noticed whispers and curious glances from townspeople. A young woman in a stylish dress approached them, her smile not reaching her eyes. Finn, I didn't expect to see you in town today. She looked pointedly at Hannah. Won't you introduce me to your friend? Rebecca, Finn nodded politely. This is Mrs. Hannah Jane. Mrs. Jane, Miss Rebecca Thornton, the banker's daughter. Hannah noted the slight emphasis on her married title and the coolness in Finn's tone. Charmed, Rebecca said, her expression suggesting otherwise. How long will you be visiting our little town, Mrs. Jane? I'm not certain, Hannah replied carefully. Rebecca's smile tightened. Well, do join us for church on Sunday. We're always eager to welcome newcomers, however. Temporary they might be. After she walked away, Hannah raised an eyebrow at Finn. I sense there's a story there, Finn sighed. Rebecca's father thinks a match between us would be advantageous, banking and ranching a perfect business arrangement. And what do you think? Hannah couldn't help asking. I think marriage should be more than a business arrangement. His eyes met hers briefly before he looked away. We should check on a few more things before heading back. As they walked down the street, a commotion erupted from the saloon. A man staggered out, clearly drunk despite the early hour. Abernathy, he shouted, spotting Finn. Still playing the high and mighty rancher, Finn stepped slightly in front of Hannah. "Go back inside, Wyatt, you're drunk. And you're a thief," Wyatt slurred, stumbling closer. "That land was supposed to be mine." "I bought it fair and square from the railroad," Finn said calmly. "You know that." Wyatt's bloodshot eyes fixed on Hannah. "Got yourself a new woman already, pretty little thing." He reached for her arm. Finn moved with surprising speed for such a large man, catching Wyatt's wrist before he could touch Hannah. "That's enough. Gentlemen," the sheriff appeared, his hand resting meaningfully on his pistol. "Is there a problem here?" "No problem, Sheriff," Finn said, releasing Wyatt's arm. "Mr. Parker was just heading back inside." "That right, Wyatt?" the sheriff asked pointedly. Wyatt spat on the ground near Finn's boots. "This ain't over, Abernathy." He stumbled back toward the saloon. "Sorry about that, Mrs. Jane," the sheriff said, tipping his hat to Hannah. "Wyatt Parker's been nursing a grudge against half the county since he lost his land claim." "Thank you for intervening, Sheriff," Hannah replied, trying to calm her racing heart. As they returned to the wagon, Hannah noticed Finn's jaw was tight with tension. "Are you all right?" she asked. "I should be asking you that," he said. "I'm sorry you had to witness that unpleasantness. It wasn't your fault." She hesitated. "Is he dangerous, Wyatt?" "Mostly to himself," Finn said, helping her into the wagon. "But it might be best if you don't come to town alone for a while, just to be safe." The ride back to the ranch was quieter, both lost in their own thoughts. As they crested the final hill overlooking the valley, Hannah found herself looking at the ranch with new eyes. In just one day, it had begun to feel like a refuge rather than simply a temporary shelter. "It's beautiful," she said softly. Finn looked surprised, then pleased. "It's not much compared to some spreads, but it's home." "It feels peaceful," Hannah added, "like a place where wounds might heal." Finn's eyes met hers, something unspoken passing between them. "I hope it can be that for you, Hannah." It was the first time he'd used her given name, and the sound of it in his deep voice stirred something in her that she wasn't ready to acknowledge. The days fell into a rhythm at Abernathy Ranch. Hannah rose early each morning to help Mrs. Peterson prepare breakfast for Finn and his 3 ranch hands, Miguel, a skilled horseman from Mexico, Jeremiah, a former Buffalo soldier who knew the territory better than anyone, and young Caleb, barely 20 and eager to learn the ranching trade. Hannah found comfort in useful work. She took over much of the cooking, mended clothes, and helped with the endless chores that kept the ranch functioning. In the evenings, they often gathered in the main room where Jeremiah would play his harmonica or Finn would read aloud from one of his books. As October gave way to November, the temperature dropped, and the first snow dusted the hills. Hannah found herself watching for Finn whenever he was away from the house, her heart lifting at the sight of him returning from the range. One evening, after the ranch hands had retired to their quarters and Mrs. Peterson to her room, Hannah sat by the fire working on a quilt. Finn entered quietly, carrying 2 mugs of hot cider. "Thought you might like something warm," he said, offering her one. "Thank you." Their fingers brushed as she took the mug, sending that now familiar warmth through her. Finn settled in the chair opposite her. "That's coming along nicely," he nodded at the quilt. "Mrs. Peterson is teaching me her patterns. I thought it might make a nice Christmas gift for Caleb." He mentioned his mother used to make quilts before she passed. Finn smiled. "You've noticed a lot about my men in a short time. They're good people. They've made me feel welcome." Hannah set aside her sewing. "As have you." Finn studied her face in the firelight. "You seem lighter these days." "Less burdened?" "I am." Hannah surprised herself with the realization. The grief is still there, but it's not all consuming anymore. "Time helps," Finn said softly, "and having purpose." "Yes." Hannah hesitated. "Finn, I've been thinking. Winter's coming, and I know you said I could stay as long as I needed, but I should make plans stay." Finn interrupted, then looked embarrassed at his forcefulness. "What I mean is, there's no rush. Everyone here values your contribution. The ranch runs better with you here." What Hannah couldn't admit, even to herself, was how much she wanted to stay, not just because she had nowhere else to go, but because somewhere along the way, this place and these people had begun to feel like home. And Finn. Finn had become someone she looked for at the beginning and end of each day. "Thank you," she said simply. "I'd like to stay through winter at least." Relief crossed his face. "Good, that's good." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the fire and stealing glances when they thought the other wasn't looking. The first major snowstorm hit in early December, confining everyone to the ranch buildings for 3 days. Hannah used the time to prepare for Christmas, secretly working on gifts for everyone: the quilt for Caleb, a new shirt for Jeremiah, embroidered handkerchiefs for Miguel, and a knitted shawl for Mrs. Peterson. For Finn, she was creating something special: a leather-bound journal she'd asked Oliver at the general store to order, into which she was copying poetry and passages from Finn's favorite books. She'd noticed how he cherished reading but had few books of his own. As Christmas approached, the ranch was transformed with simple decorations: pine boughs, red berries, and candles. Mrs. Peterson taught Hannah to make her famous plum pudding, and the men brought in a small pine tree that they set up in the main room. On Christmas Eve, after a festive dinner, they gathered around the fire to exchange gifts. The ranch hands were delighted with Hannah's offerings, and Mrs. Peterson dabbed at her eyes when she unwrapped the shawl. "Your turn, Finn," Caleb said, pushing a small package toward him. Finn unwrapped Hannah's gift carefully. When he saw the journal, his eyes widened. He opened it, discovering the carefully copied verses and prose. "Hannah," he said softly, "this must have taken weeks." "I had time in the evenings," she replied, pleased by his reaction. "It's the finest gift I've ever received." His voice was rough with emotion. He reached beneath the tree and handed her a small box. "This is for you." Inside, Hannah found a delicate silver locket. When she opened it, she gasped. It contained a tiny pressed wildflower. "It's a prairie rose," Finn explained. "I collected it back in September before the first frost. Reminded me of you, beautiful but strong enough to bloom in harsh conditions." Hannah felt tears welling in her eyes. "It's perfect. Would you help me put it on?" As Finn fastened the chain around her neck, his fingers brushed against her skin, lingering perhaps a moment longer than necessary. The touch sent her heart racing. Later, after the others had retired and they were alone by the dying fire, Finn reached for her hand. "Hannah, I know it hasn't been long since you lost your husband, and I respect your mourning. But I want you to know that you have a permanent place here if you want it." "As your housekeeper?" Hannah asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Finn's eyes met hers, vulnerable and hopeful. "If that's all you want, yes. But I've grown to care for you as more than that." Hannah felt a rush of emotions: guilt for feeling happiness so soon after Thomas's death, fear of being hurt again, but overwhelming all of that, a growing affection for this kind, honorable man. "I care for you too," she admitted, "but I'm afraid it's too soon, that I'm betraying Thomas's memory somehow." Finn squeezed her hand gently. "I understand. There's no rush, Hannah. I just wanted you to know where I stand." As winter deepened, Hannah found herself drawn more and more to Finn. They worked side by side during the day and often talked late into the evening after the others had gone to bed. He told her about his childhood in Pennsylvania, his dreams for the ranch, and even shared stories about Sarah, how they'd met as children and grown up together before marrying at 18. In turn, Hannah opened up about her life with Thomas, their struggles with the homestead, their hopes for children that never came, the pneumonia that took him so quickly she barely had time to say goodbye. "You think it's possible to love twice in one lifetime?" she asked one snowy evening in January. Finn considered the question carefully. "I believe the heart has an endless capacity for love. Loving again doesn't diminish what came before, it honors it. Shows that the first love taught you how valuable loving someone can be." His words resonated with Hannah, easing some of the guilt she'd been carrying. As January turned to February, the ranch faced a crisis when a blizzard struck while half the cattle were grazing in the north pasture. Finn and the men rode out to bring them to safety, despite the dangerous conditions. Hours passed with no sign of them. Hannah paced by the window, the knot of fear in her stomach growing tighter with each passing hour. "They know what they're doing," Mrs. Peterson assured her, though her own face showed worry. "Finn's weathered worse storms than this." When darkness fell with still no sign of the men, Hannah could bear it no longer. She began preparing hot food and coffee, heating water for baths, and gathering blankets and dry clothes. "They'll need warming when they return," she said firmly, refusing to consider any alternative. It was well past midnight when they heard horses approaching. Hannah rushed to the door as Finn and the men stumbled in, half frozen but alive. The cattle had been secured in a sheltered canyon. Hannah helped Finn remove his ice-encrusted coat. "You're freezing," she murmured, her hands shaking as she worked. "Worth it," he managed through chattering teeth. "Saved the herd." Once the men were warm, fed, and resting, Hannah insisted on checking Finn for frostbite. His hands were raw and chapped, and a nasty cut ran along his cheekbone where ice had struck him. As she gently cleaned the wound, their faces inches apart, Hannah was overcome with the realization of how easily she might have lost him. Without thinking, she leaned forward and pressed her lips to his. Finn froze for a moment, then returned the kiss with gentle pressure before pulling back to search her face. "Hannah, I was so afraid," she whispered. "When you didn't return, I realized I couldn't bear it if something happened to you before I told you how I feel. And how do you feel?" His voice was rough with emotion. "Like I've been given a second chance at happiness. With you." Finn cupped her face in his hands. "I've loved you since the moment I saw you by those tracks, looking so lost and so brave all at once." "I love you too," Hannah said, the words feeling right and true. "I think I have for a while now." Their second kiss was deeper, a promise of the future they might build together. Spring came early that year, turning the valley lush and green by mid-March. Hannah found herself humming as she worked in the garden behind the house, planting vegetables and herbs. The silver locket Finn had given her for Christmas never left her neck. One evening, Finn asked her to ride with him to his favorite spot on the ranch, a hilltop overlooking the entire valley. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in brilliant oranges and pinks, he took her hands in his. "Hannah Jane, these past months have been the happiest of my life. You've brought light back into my world when I thought it would always be in shadow." Hannah squeezed his hands. "You did the same for me. I know it hasn't been a year since Thomas passed, and if you need more time, I understand, but I can't wait another day without asking." Finn dropped to one knee. "Hannah, will you marry me? Be my wife, my partner in everything." Tears of joy filled Hannah's eyes. "Yes, Finn Abernathy, yes, I will marry you." They were wed in April in the small church in Rivercross with Mrs. Peterson, the ranch hands, and a few townspeople in attendance. Hannah wore a simple cream-colored dress she had sewn herself, with wildflowers in her hair. Finn couldn't take his eyes off her as she walked down the aisle toward him. "I now pronounce you husband and wife," the minister declared. "What God has joined together, let no man put asunder." As Finn kissed his bride, Hannah felt the final pieces of her broken heart heal. The path that had led her here had been painful, but standing beside this good man, she knew she had found where she belonged. Later, as they rode back to the ranch, their ranch now, Finn pointed to the train tracks visible in the distance. "Do you ever think about that day, when I found you crying by the tracks?" Hannah nodded, leaning against his shoulder. "Sometimes I think about how close I came to giving up hope. If you hadn't come along when you did." "I believe we were meant to find each other," Finn said, pressing a kiss to her temple. "Two broken hearts finding wholeness together." That evening, as they stood on the porch of their home watching the sunset, Finn wrapped his arms around Hannah from behind, his hands resting gently on her stomach. "What do you think about expanding our family someday?" he asked softly. Hannah turned in his arms, her heart full. "I'd like that very much. I was thinking we could start building that addition to the house this summer, add a couple more bedrooms." "A couple?" Hannah raised an eyebrow, smiling. Well, I come from a family of 4 children myself, Finn said with a grin. And this ranch has plenty of room to grow. Hannah laughed, a sound of pure joy. One step at a time, Mr. Abernathy. As twilight deepened around them, Hannah reflected on the journey that had brought her here. From the depths of despair beside those tracks to this moment of perfect happiness, she had traveled a greater distance than any train could carry her. "Thank you," she whispered, standing on tiptoe to kiss her husband. "For what?" Finn asked, his arms tightening around her. "For stopping that day, for lifting me into your wagon when I had nowhere else to go." "Best decision I ever made," Finn replied, his eyes reflecting all the love in his heart. "Bringing you home was bringing my own happiness home too." As stars began to appear in the darkening sky, Hannah and Finn Abernathy stood together on the porch of their ranch, their future stretching before them as vast and promising as the Wyoming frontier itself, a new chapter written from the ashes of grief, a love story that began with a widow's tears by the railroad tracks and a cowboy who couldn't ride past without stopping.